Let's get into a few different types of trig that you're going to see potentially on the ACT. There are in general anywhere from 4 to 5 trig related questions on the ACT. They do vary, so I can't teach you everything we need to know about trig, but I can give you a majority of them. It could be all 4, it could be 3 out of the 4, but at least you'll have a slight advantage. So first up is the Pythagorean theorem. So that is the a squared plus b squared equals c squared, where c is our hypotenuse. So in this case, the question is, for the triangle shown, what is the expression for y in terms of x, y being the hypotenuse? So I'm going to say a is one of the legs, b is the other, so we'll say x is a and 4 is b. So setting that up, that's x squared plus 16 equals c squared. They asked about c. Now c is actually y. So since c is y and we're solving for y, I'm going to take the root of both sides, and that would give me just y. So my actual answer is E. So Pythagorean theorem, which I know we all know pretty well. Here's the 3 you may not know quite as well. You do this a little bit in geometry, but really hit it hard in trig. SOHCAHTOA, where sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tan is opposite over adjacent. So really, the important thing here is being able to label your sides and determine which angle you're talking about and set up a SOHCAHTOA. So if you don't know that phrase, you might want to learn that. So this says, what is sine theta, which here's theta. All that is a variable. Theta is just a variable. And they want sine of that. So let's determine what all the sides are. The hypotenuse is always the longest side, and it's across from the 90. The opposite does not make the angle. These two sides make my angle. So the third side is actually the opposite. And then the side that also makes the angle with the hypotenuse is the adjacent. So in this question it says, what is sine? Sine, we said, is the SO part of SOHCAHTOA. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So I need to write what the opposite is, which in this case is A, over the hypotenuse, which is C. So my answer is G, A over C. So setting up the triangle, realizing what angle they're talking about is the most important stuff. Here they want us to know, and really I need to read the question in order to figure out what is the missing variable. In this case it says distance miles from the boat to the dock. So it looks like this is my variable, that is from the boat to the dock. They gave me this angle, which is 52. So I want to know the relationship between the two sides I have, the unknown and the 30, to this 52 degrees. So looking at that angle, the x is the opposite, and the 30, which also makes the angle, is my adjacent. It is not the hypotenuse, which would be the boat to the lighthouse here. So I need to use the two things I know. In this case, that would be opposite over adjacent is TOA, tan, which is why I choose tan, which is opposite over adjacent. So tan 52 is opposite x over adjacent 30, and then I'm going to solve for x. So I get 30, multiply that over 30, tan 52 is my answer. Now, interestingly, in this case anyway, f is the only answer that has tan in it. So I could have figured out it was tan right off the bat and then gone to my answer of f because it's the only one with tan in it. They will very rarely make you do any calculations on your calculator. You notice it didn't make me do tan 52 on my calculator because that's a very easy thing to mess up. So they rarely do that for you. Equation for circles, so moving on from trig to a little bit of algebra 2 and actually geometry. So x minus h and y minus k. hk is your center. Notice it is the opposite sign for h and k. So let's say I had x minus 2. H is actually positive 2. And then it's always r squared for the radius. So let's say this thing equaled 25. That means the radius is 5. So what they have you do on the ACT is write equations or match graphs or really anything relating a graph or a scenario where they give you a center and the radius to an equation. So it says for our standard graph and coordinate plane, the center of this thing is at 4. So that means my x is positive 4, so if I were to look at these equations, that means it needs to be x minus 4 because it's x minus h. And if h is 4, that means it's x minus 4. So f is gone because that's plus. And then for the k, that actually is k is 4 on k. So that doesn't work for me. So there's my 3 potentials. Also, we noticed with the equation a second ago, it is always plus in the middle for a circle. So looking at my options, h is gone because it was minus y squared. And that leaves these two. So what is the radius if my center is at 4, 0 and this thing goes through 0, 0? The radius is 4, but it equals the radius squared. So this one is very tempting, but wrong, because it needs to be the radius squared. So my answer finally is G. So the only circle equations they ask you on the ACT are relating usually the graph to the equation or the equation to a scenario.